Hi, welcome back to my channel. So today let's talk about end-to-end test. It's a very important type of test, and we will use Cypress as a test framework to test against a web application we have built in one of my online free course. And before we start to introduce the Cypress itself, let's take a look at the test pyramid first. So the test pyramid is basically a theory about how you should structure your test in your web application or any kind of application. So it has many different meanings in this simple triangle here. So basically, you can see it has 3 layers. In practice, it might contain many layers, more than 3. So it has like a unit test at the bottom. And as the shape suggests, you can see there are many numbers of unit tests at the bottom. And above the unit test, there are some service tests or integration tests. It's not as much as unit test, but it still has the considerable number of tests there. And in the top of the pyramid, there are UI tests. Or in some cases, we call it end-to-end test. It always starts from the UI or the interface. It could be a web page, or it could be a command line. It really depends on how you define the user interface. And it should has only a small amount of UI tests in your overall test suites. And that's one way to interpret it. And it also has some other meanings, like on top of the pyramid, normally it runs very slow, and on the other hand, it's faster on the bottom. And apart from that, the UI tests is normally very expensive to run, and it's hard to debug. The reason behind that is because it is UI, it has end-to-end connection. It will test against all the moving parts under the hood. For example, in the UI, if you see a number is incorrect, it might be the calculation is wrong, or the data fetching is incorrect, or even on the UI it's rendering or rounding up logic is incorrect. So there could be many reasons for a UI test to fail, and that's why it's expensive to debug. And also, as I just said, it has to talk to the real services. So any part of the application failed in some way, people making changes, introducing new bugs, and it can cause the UI test to fail. And it also will use a lot of resources, like it will send the request to an actual server, so that server need to be up and running. And unlike unit tests, you only need to run this isolated code. You don't have to. The rest of the word is kind of not exist to the code you're running. And for integration tests, you have to at least run 2 modules or 2 components in a system, and on the UI you need to run all of them. So today we are going to focusing more on the UI tests or end-to-end test on the top of the pyramid, which is kind of an interesting topic because everything you see will be real. So the application we're going to test against is a web application we built from this course. So if you haven't yet, please sign up and have a look. Basically the course is covering all the fundamental knowledge about the TDD with React. It has like a 2.5 hours unit, and it introduces all the test-driven development methodology, how you do that in small steps. And once you have done that, it will learn how to do the mocking API and build the weather application and put them together. We are going to use this web application as our demonstration here. So I will put the link in the description below. And it is a fully, totally free online course. Feel free to sign up and yeah, let me know how you find it. So the code base is stored here in TDD weather under my repo. I will put this link in the description below as well. So the repo has a few branches, and we will start from the round 2, which is almost done. But if you want to start from the beginning, you can check out to the master branch. And I have already got the repo here, so I can simply launch an application like so, npm start, and it will have this nice web application running in your browser. So this application allows you to search by a city name, and it goes a list of cities. You pick up one of them and add that to a city list or weather list, if you like, and that will trigger a fetch. It will get all the weather information about that particular city. So for example, if I want to search for Melbourne and I search, it will give me a list of Melbournes, and there are many by the way. There's the one in US, but I will pick up this one, and it will tell me that today's weather is 24. It's cloudy. Yeah, that's basically the end-to-end test we're going to cover here. So we will simulate these scenarios, like in localhost 3000, we would like to see on the web page, we would like to see there is a title there. So that will be our very first test case. That can make sure there is something running on port 3000, and then we can test if the searching is working, and if we pick up the item from the list, can it add the result to the weather list. So what is Cypress? Cypress is a testing framework that allows you to testing your application, especially for the web application, to check if the actual implementation meet the requirement. So it is real, and if you want to learn the benefit of why you should using Cypress, there's some document that's pretty good, and who should use them. It has all the great documentation. So I'm going to just skip them because you can read it. It's pretty good. So we'll start from the installation. So because we have already got the repo, the TDD weather, you can either install the Cypress into this repo, or you can install it outside. It doesn't matter. And as it's an end-to-end test, sometimes we can make it live outside the repo. But in here, I'm going to use it right in the repo. So we'll see change directly to the repo and then install the Cypress. Okay, let's copy this line and paste it into our repo here. And it will install the Cypress binary. It will install the driver, the default drivers, and we can use them to drive the tests. So once we have this installed, there is a wizard, visually wizard we can use. It's called we can run npx cypress open to launch the wizard, and from there it will be very easy to configure these settings for our application. So it will ask if you want to use the end-to-end test or component test, and as we are focusing more on end-to-end, so we'll do this, and it will give you some templates. It will generate a few files for you, and we just skip that for now. And it will ask which environment you want the test to run. So we will going to use Chrome because this is a web application, and we can simply start end-to-end test in Chrome, and it will. So let me resize this. So as you can see, there is something running in this new browser window, and we can create our first spec. So a spec is just another word for a test. It's short for specification, which is a fancy word to describe the requirement. Like, I think the term comes from specification by example. So you basically describe what the application should be doing, and then it will follow this as a guideline. So the specification needs to be human readable, and that's why we will put some testing descriptions. And yeah, having that said, let's create our first spec. We can call it weather spec or weather dot spec. I don't know. It's up to you to give it a reasonable name. So we'll create the weather spec.cy.ts, and it will create this template into that specification file. And okay, let's run this. Let's have a look at the weather spec.cy.ts, what is inside it. So as you can see here in the Cypress, it has end-to-end, and there is a weather.spec.cy.ts, which is just created by the Cypress. So in here, it's simply doing visit this website, right? So our first test will be, let's ask the Cypress to visit our application in 3000. So let's copy this 3000 into the visitor here, and let's go back to the test. And as you can see, it's actually accessing the 3000, and it has this, the application embedded in the runner here. That is great. So we can ask this test to, expect cy.contains weather application. So this is an assertion. It will check if the weather application text is shown up on the application. And the beautiful thing is that the Cypress it has a timer to track when the text shows up, and it has timeout and a retry mechanism. And that is a beautiful way to help the developers to checking, periodically, is this text showing up? So let's say what is showing up here. So you can see the test is passing, and the test body, the first line is visiting the 3000 localhost, and then it checking contains, does the application include weather application or not, and does. That is fantastic. So this is our very first Cypress test. All right, so let's try something more interesting. Like on the application page, we would like to type into a city name and click the search button, and then we will pick up an item from the list. And that is what a user would do on your page, right? So let's start from here. Just like any other test, we need to find this element on the page and find this one as well, and then tap into something in here, and then click this button if we could find it, and we were expecting something to show up as a drop-down list, and we can then pick up one of them. So let's do that in here. In the inspector, let's find out what is this one actually. It is test ID search input. So in Cypress, you can use this. Let's duplicate this test first. I would like to change this to weather application, and this is title. It shows title, and this one will be select a city. So let's copy this, and so first let's copy this test ID, and in here we need to use the get API to get this element, and we need to type into that. We can try Marvin, and then we will need to find the contains search button. If we can't find it, let's click that button, and then we should be able to see something to shows up here. let's have a look at the actual test runner. Oh, as you can see here, it's actually already working. So this test, select a city. So in the test body, it visits to the 3000, contains the weather application, get this input ID, and type in the Melbourne into that input box. And then we find the search and click. And also you can see it's actually sending a request to open weather map, and it's sent with my API ID as well. So, and that's all great. And we will need to find the very first one. So let's check out what is that list. Let's say Melbourne search. And this list is under the search results. And we will pick up the first search result class, which will be cy.get this one, and the first search result we can, because this search result is like it has up to 5 results, so we need to pick up the first one and we will click it. Oh, actually, I think there will be another test case to cover this click. So in here, we probably just checking and should have links 5. That should be enough for our first test here, because we want to check the result has something in there. So let's run the test here. It works perfectly. You can see it has search result. It has 5 of them. That is great. And for this click, we can put it into another test. Let's say, select a city and add city to the weather list. And here we will find the first item. We click it, and we click it, and then we would expect something to be added on the weather list. Let's find it out. What is this one? It's my weather list in the weather container. Okay, so let's say cy.get, and what is that container? Weather container, right? So we will need to check the weather container contains. We actually should check this one, I guess. Contains Melbourne, as we are searching for Melbourne, right? Let's try it out. Yes, it's working perfectly. It will search for Melbourne and get Melbourne. And the weather is the weather is 24 degree clouds. So this is how you interact with your application with Cypress. So Cypress include many other usable APIs. You can either checking if something is contained by the page. Also, there are many selectors and the interactions, and you can find them in the document. And there are many assertions. You can check like if something is happening, if it has not happening. If it's like you can pick up something, select some data, and check if the result is correct or not. So in the query section, there are many other helpers like parents, siblings. It will help you to select accurately what you're looking for, and get the element, doing something around it, like actions. You can check a checkbox, double click a button, scroll to a particular area and select some items. So obviously there are many things to learn to get familiar with, but I hope so far you have already got the basic idea of how to install it, configure it, and run your very first test suite. Alright, let's talk about errors, or when you expect something to happen but it didn't. So for example, if we want to say Melbourne and we want to see 5 items to be shown on the result, but we so instead of doing 5, we check if it's equals to 4 and then see how the test going. And as you can see, it failed. Right? It's expecting 4 items but got 5, and the assertion is error, and there is a timeout you can see here because it's keep retrieving, and it times out after 4 seconds, and it couldn't find the 5 items. So this test case will fail. Select a city, but the rest is remains. Great. And let's fix this to 5. And I would like to show you another interesting thing about the test failure. So so far we are always using this GUI kind of thing to run our test, but it's not a typical workflow I'm following. So I like to use command line and running the test headlessly in the headless mode. So for example, I don't typically using this. Let's close this first. So let's close that test and close the Cypress. So I normally run the test by npx Cypress run in the command line. So I can specify which test I would like to run. So you can say Cypress end-to-end all the spec files. I want to run all of them, and in the browser Chrome. You can, if you don't specify which browser it should run, by default it will pick up the Electron, but in here we will prefer to use the Chrome. So if you run them here, it will be in a silent mode. It will not interrupt your your typical working flow, like you prefer to type the code, running the unit test, things of that, and then the end-to-end test can run in silently on the back end, or you can, before you push to the remote, you can finally run this end-to-end test. That's what I normally following. And the interesting thing is the video here. So the video is a kind of a record of what's happening, because you're running that in a headless mode and you're not seeing what is going on. So it will save a video record of what is happening. So let's find out what is actually recorded. So you can see it is actually doing its job and it's checking everything works well. That is great. You can adjust the resolution as well, so you can see it's kind of blurry here, but I'm using the default resolution. But what I really want to show you here is what happens if we want to say if it has Sydney or not, and then we'll run a test. So we know that will fail, and we can see it throws a arrow, and we can see it throws the arrow, add city to a weather list failed, and there's timeout. And the most interesting here is this screenshot. It will catch that particular arrow, and save it is as a PNG file. And if we go back to the IDE, you can see there is a screenshot. It could be multiple if you have many arrows, and it will show you what exactly on the page at that point. So you can see we want to check if the application contains Sydney, but it doesn't. That's a great way to debugging, especially when you are not running, when you're not saying or opening the browser to see what is happening, but it's purely in a headless, in a silent mode. So typically you would have many end-to-end tests, maybe not 100, but you will have 20 or 30 critical passes, and you want to check. So your change might break one or two of them, but obviously you don't want to run all of them again and again. So this is a great way to catch that particular case, and you can see what is actually not showing up. So sometimes it's like a timeout from the downstream, or sometimes some CSS changes can cause this kind of feeling as well, like if you hide the element when you shouldn't, and it's not visible on the page, things like that. And yeah, so I found this is very helpful for me to debugging, especially when I have many UI tests. All right, that's basically what I have to show you today. I actually have an articular blog post related to this one, so I will put a link in the description below as well, so please check it out. It has more advanced usage of Cypress, and I hope you find it useful, and I would encourage you to use that in your application if you haven't yet. And please let me know what you found it. Is that helpful, or you found it's lack of some critical information you are looking for? And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, turn on notification, and I will see you in the next video.